Now, as we jump to countries again, and as a context to the sort of next speech or talk, you have to understand that the good Danes tend to come in pairs. So everybody who's around in the 90s remembers Olsen brothers, right? So Laudrup brothers from the football scene, right? On this stage now from Denmark, we will have two Adams. So one from the government side, working on digitization of the whole government, and the other from the IT and electronics industry. And the government Adam actually gets to start. All right.
Thank you very much.
That will be the video as well. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here in Estonia to talk about digital government. Of all places, this is the right place to be. Very happy for that. I'm also very happy for the last speaker, Mr. Pols. And I just noticed one of the conclusions that you mentioned in terms of data, the need for data policies. And that's actually a bit of the topic that I'm going to give you some examples about how we work with this in the Danish government. My name is Adam Mollerup. I'm a head of division in the Danish Ministry of Finance, working in the digitization agency. I'm heading the basic data program, which I will tell you a little bit about. It's basically an example of how we work with data in the public sector. We will, I will not talk about big data. I will not talk about the entire realm of opportunities surrounding big data, but I will talk a little bit about the raw material, the digital raw material that exists in the public sector. And that is what we call basic data. So first of all, we already had a lot of presentations, videos, but I actually have another one here. It is in Danish, so please, for those of you who do not capture the Scandinavian language here, we have subtitles, so it should be understandable, but I'll have just a very brief introduction to the basic data program.
Vi har en god nyhed. De gode grunddata er på vej. I århundreder har de offentlige myndigheder indsamlet og registreret grundlæggende oplysninger om Danmark og danskerne, vores virksomheder, ejendomme og meget mere. I dag er disse registreringer digitale og ligger i store nationale registre. De er Danmarks digitale råstof. Indtil nu har data i de forskellige registre været løse brikker. De passede ikke helt sammen og kunne være svære at få fat på. Men nu samles de under betegnelsen grunddata. Det betyder, at data forbedres, gøres sammenhængende og leveres fra ét sted. Derfor har du nu mulighed for at sammensætte grunddata, præcis som du har brug for. Måske en kombination af geo- og klimadata kan skabe nye forretningsmuligheder, eller kan person-, ejendoms- og virksomhedsdata nytænke faste arbejdsgange. Måske har du en kombination, som kan gøre en forskel. Se, det er en god nyhed. Se mere på www.grunddata.dk, Danmarks digitale råstof.
So that was just a very brief explanation of what we mean with the notion of basic data. I think you can compare it a little bit like every day we use electricity. It's a service, it's everywhere. But Well, if we rewind a little bit, several hundred years ago, well, voltage wasn't the same. There was no grid. There were no standards. There were no stability in the supply. And that's a little bit what we're trying to deal with in terms of the basic data in the public sector here. So we have identified a number of the most important data set that we have in Denmark about the Danes, about the Danish society. And we have gathered them in this basic data program where we have worked consistently since 2012 to improve these data. And it's a cross-government effort, and I know that Tavi, earlier on this morning, he was very envious of the Singapore government and their capacity to take decisions and also their governance setup. And I think an important thing about understanding the Danish approach is that we have a cross-government collaboration that basically runs most of the digital government strategic efforts that we do. And this means that sometimes it can be a little bit cumbersome, but it also means that once we come up with solutions, these solutions are covering the entire nation and the entire public sector. So that's what we see as a very great strategic advantage, that we have not only a large scope, but also depth in terms of the implementation. The basic data program is about standardizing the data. It's about improving the quality of the public data. We've had loads of registries where, even though we've had them for a number of years, the quality of the data was simply not high enough. So when we looked into the data, it meant that, well, you couldn't really rely on processes, you couldn't rely on data, you needed to quality assure. And we've also worked with the accessibility of the data, both in terms of standardization, having them well documented, having models, but also in terms of distributing the data in a coherent and a consistent manner. So that's what the basic data program in brief is about. So what does this mean in practice? Well, for example, if you run an ambulance, in Denmark we have a lot of what we call, in Danish it's called kolonihaver. So it's basically like a kind of gardens. We're also very fond in Denmark of potatoes. So in these small gardens, typically in the suburbs, then people can go and they can grow their own potatoes. But it's typically like allotments without any real data on. So if something should happen in the famous Danish hygge environment, then where do you send the ambulance? And it's just a very simple example of the need of having good data, where it actually means that you might save like 5 minutes if you need to go somewhere and you have the need of a specific address to turn into and to register. So that's one example of the quality of the data and also the comprehensiveness of the data. Another thing is that we have seen is that making these public data freely available for private businesses also means that small startups are starting to smell the coffee. And this means, for example, that we have a young startup called Lasso, which has decided to use these different public registries on the business, well, the business registration, the registration about ownership, and combining these different registries in order to help the big banks, well, the financial sector, comply with international regulation on how to, for example, prevent money laundering, but also on how to ensure that you put the right people in the right boards, that you follow up, that you have all the reporting mechanisms that were, until recently, until the establishment of the services that, for example, this company provides, was done manually, even in larger and traditionally highly digitalized banks. So that's another example of how, like, the use of public data, basic public data, is actually nurturing innovation and also private businesses. It also covers big businesses, not only the banks and the financial sector, which obviously relies on the quality of the data. For example, if I go into the bank to get a loan, then the bank will look up, well, what's the value of the apartment or the property that you're going to rent? So they will again rely on the quality of the public data in order to give a sound and well-documented financial service. So the quality of the public data is essential. It also goes for the construction industry, where we can now see that the data that we have in the public registries are increasingly being used. As part of the basic data program, we have now gathered and opened up the data on climate, on places, and on how, for example, we've made a new hydro model that basically tells, for example, a construction company, how does water move? What is the characteristics of the soil? And obviously that is very important if you're going to build something, and when you're going to instruct your machinery in order to start working. Also, we can see today that when you start digging a big hole in order to construct a new house, well, it's all GPS designed in advance. So the public register on how and where you have pipes, wires in the ground is very crucial in order for you to make sure that you don't cut them when digging the new holes, which obviously can lead to productivity losses and connectivity and productivity losses. Obviously another example is well, the local government and also the central government's capacity to plan using these data, being able to rely on data both on geographics, also on weather, on climate. Being able to combine these data is important input in local planning. So this might sound like a lot of very different examples. So what are we actually looking at? What are we actually covering in this concept of basic data? We've established this basic data model, which is fundamentally a way of establishing relations between, well, logical and also technical relations between the main registries that we are covering in this basic data program. And this is all the data about persons. It's data about the companies. It's the data about real property. It's data about addresses, streets, areas, places. It's about maps, geography, and about water and climate. So under these conceptual groups, we have a number of registries, and these are the registries that we, in this first round of the basic data program, consider the basic data. So these are the data that we are working on, that we have been working on since 2012 in order to consolidate them, to standardize them, to make sure that they're well documented, and to in a coherently manner, distribute them so that they can be used both in the public sector and in the private sector. So this basically brings us to what is this program fundamentally about. It has been a huge investment of the Danish government in 2012. More than 120 million euros has been invested in this program. Still, we have a positive business case. We have a financially positive business case. How is that possible? Well, as I started out saying, the situation a few years ago was that you have a lot of double registrations. You have a lot of shadow registers. You have a lot of IT systems with legacy components that are difficult and expensive to maintain. You have a lot of manual processes, both at the local level but also at the central level, in order to reassure that the quality of the data is as it should be. And these are the processes that we can actually cut away by establishing a joint platform, a joint distribution of what we can now consider as authoritative data. And authoritative in this sense means that you do not have to reconfirm, you do not need to ask the citizen again. You can just use them as they are. And obviously for private businesses, this also holds great potential, not only because we put these data, we make them available freely for for businesses to use, obviously still within the privacy framework that the legislation constitutes. But within these constraints, all these data sets are put available in this new platform we've created, the data distribution platform. And that is basically what we are building, basically a new data ecosystem. We're building a new platform where not only the public sector can build services, where the public sector can improve its processes, but also where private businesses can go in and create new services. And I think one of the interesting observations that we've been able to make within these last years where we've had these registries open in a consolidated manner is that the private businesses working with business intelligence and with data analytics and providing services, they don't, even though it's public data, it's the main point is that it's data about the Danish society. So they do not only create services that are targeted at the public sector, they're also making services for the private sector. So they're creating wealth, creating growth. They are creating new stuff that would not have been invented if it was not for these sources of data. So this is a very short introduction to the basic data program. We will have the first round of this basic data program concluded by spring next year. And for those of you who might have followed it in the Danish media, I'm not sure if the international media have caught up on it, but we just launched a couple of weeks ago a new digital strategy, which is again a cross-government effort. It both represents the municipalities, the regions, and the government. And obviously data plays a crucial role in this new strategy. We have three main themes. Well, first of all, to create better services. Secondly, to create a framework conditions for growth. But finally, also to create this, to establish this in a trustworthy manner. So, data plays a key role across all these three themes, and this is why we will continue working not only with the basic data program, enlarging the scope and the depth of the basic data program in a Danish context, but also with, as was mentioned before, data policy and the standardization and the use of data in general across the public sector, so that we can ensure that we have a good foundation for both policy making, but also public administration in general. So these were the very brief words. You can read some more on this. Grønlykke is the basic data program's website. There's some information available in English and also at the webpage of the Danish Digitization Agency, where we have, if not now, but then perhaps later today or perhaps tomorrow, the strategy available in an English version as well as the Danish one, which is already available. So for now, thank you very much for your attention. And yes, we'll talk to you later. Yes. Yes.